Joining me now, Bianco Research President Jim Bianco. Jim, let's start with your thoughts. Central banks, the SWIFT system, other measures being implemented. Explain how this is actually changing warfare forever.
You know, you can also, Charles, back up a couple of weeks earlier with the sanctions that were put on the Canadian truckers too. We're weaponizing the financial system, and we're using the financial system as a club to beat people, whether it's individuals or countries that don't behave in ways we want to behave. Now, that doesn't mean they don't deserve it in the case especially of Russia, but this is going to have big consequences for how we move forward from here, that we're going to have to look at our investments in the financial system, that it can be used as a club. And maybe that club gets used against Iran or China or North Korea in the future. Right. Now, the good news might be we're not going to send the kids of the poor to fight in kinetic wars around the world. Maybe we could do it digitally, but that also is going to require a whole new rethink of how we view things. And it started this month, I think. You know,
and to that point, Jim, you know, for a while now, there was this narrative that Bitcoin hadn't lived up to the promise of the hype, you know, of being a hedge against inflation and things like that. And here it is today, staging a hell of a rally. Is that in part an acknowledgement that, yeah, we're going after the bad guys and this is a great weapon, but ultimately this may also usher in that sort of decentralized finance revolution sooner rather than later?
Yes, exactly. Because while this might be a great weapon and while this might be being used in a way that we agree with now, that doesn't mean down the road that it won't be abused at some point. And people are going to want to protect themselves from that. And the whole idea of a permissionless, decentralized currency that cannot be taken away. Your money cannot be taken away from you. Your financial system cannot be taken away from you in the future because somebody disapproves of what you do. This is why it's a very slippery slope. But from the Canadian truckers to what's happened over the weekend with the disconnecting of SWIFT, that we've already done it, and now we're going to have to understand what we've done and consider the consequences.
You know, Jim, many people have forgotten or never really knew about the history of long-term capital management. It's still one of the biggest scars in market history, and it began with really a bad bet on Russia. Is this one of the reasons Wall Street, of all the entities out there, has been very, very quiet? I mean, what are the chances that there could be exposure to Russia that no one's talking about?
Oh, I think that there's big exposure to Russia, especially among European banks. And if you saw the way that some of the European banks were down 10 or 11% today just on that news. And yeah, we are very worried about that. And to your larger point, you've pointed out in your monologue that a lot of companies are starting to move away from Russia, most likely, or most notably BP, by taking a $25 billion charge against its Rosneft position. But who's been unusually quiet about distancing themselves from Russia has been the banking system, and I might add the FANG stocks as well, too. I'm not hearing anything from Google or Facebook or Twitter, you know, something similar like that as well, too. And it might be in the case of the banking system is that the cost for them to distance themselves is very, very high, and they have to think twice about it.
Jim, before I let you go, I like the way the market, I really love the way the market acted last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You know, could this be sort of a wake-up call with respect to the Great Reset? We knew it was overdue, that stocks are overvalued, but it wreaked so much havoc. Could it have gone too far?
It might have in some cases gone too far, but once we get past this initial issue with the Ukraine, assuming we do in Russia, we're going to have to then default back to we've got 40-year high in inflation, a very easy Fed. They're still buying bonds this week, and we're going to have to deal with an inflation problem. Doesn't mean the market can't rally. It has rallied in the future in inflation problems, but that might mean which stocks are you thinking about? More of the commodities and inflation beneficiaries and less of the, you know, kind of growth kind of stocks. Right. But we still have that issue that we're going to have to contend with once we get past this one.
Jim, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. Now I want to bring in the host of Kudlow, Larry Kudlow.